going to give you now an overview of employment legislation in South Africa. Part of the reason for this is just you need to have some basic understanding of employment legislation. We're not going to go into a lot of detail except for the Labour Relations Act, which I'll show you in more detail just now. But so, yeah, the workbook tells you that in the name of the Act and what it covers. The point to understand is that each covers certain things, and the name covers, but you need to have a little bit slightly broader. So, Labour Relations Act, workplace rights, join a union, form a union, employer organization. Employer organization is, by the way, a kind of union for employers, sort of, okay? Easiest way to explain. All right, and then Basic Conditions of Employment Act, Fundamental Minimum Terms, Conditions of Employment, Employment Equity Act, Discrimination, Affirmative Action, Equity in the Workplace. Skills development, this is development of skills, compensation, occupation, exactly that. Occupational Health and Safety Act, Health and Safety. Okay, so the first skill, so to speak, sometimes you don't think of it as a skill, but knowing what each piece of legislation deals with. You won't look in one act, employment equity, for something which you know is about discrimination or should know dealing with in skills. Okay, you would hope that that's correct. But you also need to know that there are regulations and codes of good practice for each piece of legislation. So you need to know that you might look, and we will look, from the Labour Relations Act at a code of good practice. So in your workbook, I've set them all out there for you. I don't think it's necessary for me to go into each one other than just take note of what they're about, okay, under each heading or each act, etc. So the Labour Relations Act, the one we're going to be looking at, Code of Good Practice on Dismissal. There are other ones that I haven't mentioned there, but anyway. So that's the Code of Good Practice. And basically, what a Code of Good Practice is a guideline for employers to follow. So we're going to be looking at the Code of Good Practice dismissal. And when I say guideline, it's also employers are basically obliged to follow it. All right. So all of these codes form part and parcel of our employment legislation, and they guide employers, other organizations, into what is regarded as kind of best practice and can be enforceable in certain situations.